And welcome to another Masked Cricketer, the ninth in our series. Hopefully you can join us on our new night of Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. As you can see, I have dressed up for the occasion. I thought I would make an effort this week. I have been actually in makeup since about 2:30. My makeup artist did say, "Why are you getting me to do this? I'm not very good." And as you can see, she was actually 100% right. She's not very good. So hopefully you can take us seriously through the evening when we get to the Q&A. It's all right. It's my own nose. I picked it myself. So I'll get rid of all the jokes first, obviously. And
you picked your own nose. You picked your
nose.
Absolutely.
I had to get that one in. Love the joke. I would also say there was a lot of rumours going around last week. They said, "What are those couple of clowns doing on the Masked Cricketer?" So I thought I'll prove them right, and at least 50% will be a clown this week. So I made the effort to actually do what you thought, guys. Actually, to be fair. Just to be serious for a moment, you can see a banner up there for my son. Happy birthday, Matt. 29 today. I hope you're having a good day and school was okay. Let's get rid of that. Obviously, we've done this to have a bit of fun during lockdown. We've had an amazing response to it over the last week or so. We've had 2,100 views on last week's show. Great when we actually messed it up, but it made for the evening for me because I thought it was quite amusing. So thank you for watching, and also thanks again for tuning in tonight. And also, I think we're up nearly to 550 members on our Masked Cricketer Facebook page as well, which is a tremendous effort in a week or so. So thank you for joining, and please keep sharing and keep joining. It's out there. Please do that if you can. Obviously, my last bit before I ask Kieran on board is the fact that we are doing this for a little bit of charity, and I've now just scrolled it at the bottom for the fundraising Just Giving page for the Lord Taverners, who've been quite supportive in the last couple of weeks. So if you can donate, please do. It's not compulsory, but if you feel like you've had a bit of fun, please donate, and that's the Just Giving page below. So Kieran, what have you got for us before we unleash the Masked Cricketer?
Well, you mentioned earlier that Kieran brings the touch of professionalism. Trying my hardest to keep a straight face. I must admit, actually, you look better than you do most weeks, Daryl. So that's something. I'm not sure if you're the Masked Cricketer or whether our Masked Cricketer that's in the green room is dressed as well as you. As Daryl said, absolutely overwhelmed with the support we've had over the last couple of weeks. It's really taken off. It's almost gone. I'd always say it's gone a bit viral, actually. Over 2,100 viewers last week, which is absolutely incredible, particularly as Daryl said, that we unmasked the mask before we'd even started, which we were a bit disconcerted that Neil Pickup and a few others guessed it within 10 seconds. Just goes to show how observant myself and Daryl are, because we hadn't actually spotted that. But you can't get the staff, Daryl, really, can you? So anyway, this week's is going to be fantastic. I'm going to say famous last words here, but I think it's going to be a tough one to guess. He or she is a good cricketer of many years gone, and I think that when we unmask the cricketer today, we'll have a lot of fun. I'd just like to say what we would also like is we're looking to try and offer a prize to whoever guesses correctly first. So if anybody has an opportunity to perhaps donate a prize, it doesn't have to be much. If you want to donate a prize to the Masked Cricketer, get in touch with either myself or Daryl via the group, via a direct message, and I'm sure that we'll snap that up and we'll give you a good mention. As Daryl said, this is all for a bit of fun, but we are looking to raise some funds for the Lord's Taverners who support Oxfordshire disability cricket. It's a cause really close to our hearts. Darryl and I were at Wormsley last year, and we were absolutely inspired by a young lad called George Hiley, and he, at the end of the day, he's inspired us, and we just want to give something back. If you can donate, then please do so. You can either go to the site that's scrolling on the bottom of the screen, or you can click through the links on the Facebook group, and we will be very grateful for anything you can give, no matter how small or large that is. And anything that we can raise for a fantastic cause would be absolutely fantastic. And I'm still trying my hardest to keep a straight face, looking at Krusty the Clown there. So yes, thanks again for everybody that supported us. Thank you for the views we've got online at the moment. One thing I would ask is, as per usual, it's going to be straight yes/no questions for the unmasking ceremony, if you like. If you can put your questions into the messaging onto the group, we'll scroll through them and we'll ask the questions. It'll be yes/no, and hopefully over the course of time, we'll be able to unmask the mask and then have a good chat and talk about this masked cricketer's career, which, as I say, spans back probably as long as I can remember. That's the only clue I'm giving. So hopefully it'll be a really good evening. Got 40 viewers online at the moment, which is, again, fantastic. So I think without further ado, Krusty, Darryl, I think we can crack on with this week's.
Yeah, I think we can. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Sorry about that. Just checking that our masked cricketer is ready. I think our masked cricketer, am I getting a thumbs up? I think I'm getting a thumbs up. So I'm adding to the stream. So there we are. We have our 9th masked cricketer. And my first question, because I know it's coming in, have you played at Great and Little Chew Cricket Club? Oh, first time, Kieran. First question, first masked cricketer not had the pleasure of playing at Great and Little Chew. Amazing.
I've got a question just in case there's a double bluff. Are you, by any chance, Max Mannering? Oh, what a shame.
We couldn't have got it wrong both 2 weeks running, could we? Surely. Well, probably, yeah, we could, actually, to be fair.
We could have done.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask, do you play in the Chilwell League? Or have you played in the Chilwell League? No. Okay. Have we played in the Home Counties Premier League? Right. Are you Dave Freeman?
I think he might have played it true, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a no. Kieran, over to you.
Yeah, we've got one. Are you a batsman, predominantly known as a batsman?
No, not a batsman. So, as that sort of suggests, are you known for your bowling? Yes, known for his bowling.
Okay. Right, we've got a couple of other questions that come in. I'll just run both of these through. So they've got 3 questions. I'll do them one after the other. The first one is, don't we all? Do you like cider? Do you like cider? That doesn't really narrow it down much in the middle of summer after a hot day, does it? So I'm glad that Joe's asked this question, because you often diss my league, which is a fantastic league. We've got Ian Royal watching tonight, Darryl, so be very careful. Have you ever played in the OCA Cricket League?
Kieran, he would have had to have dressed like me to have been playing in the OCA. Come on.
As I've just said, we've got the esteemed cricketer and umpire for the OCA watching us tonight, Mr. Royal. So
I've just lost
remember that when he's umpiring you, I think that'll be a decision against you potentially.
Oh.
Brilliant. So you haven't played OCA. Have you played? Oh, this is a good question from Pete Tooby. This might narrow it down a wee bit. Have you played first-class cricket? Ooh.
First-class cricketer. Good stuff. Like it.
You do pick them now, don't you?
We do pick them. Yeah. Are you
Right.
a right-arm bowler? Yes. Are you a fast bowler? No. Oh, okay. Are you under 35? Oh, first-class cricketer. Should ask the question. Are you still playing first-class cricket?
Well, of course, nobody is at the moment, Darryl, but I see where you're coming from.
That is a good point.
Okay, we've got our first sensible guess. I'm not saying that the Dave Freeman guess wasn't that sensible because obviously he hadn't played it true. So we have got a question. Are you Jack Brooks?
He's not the headband warrior. That's a good question from Elliot Graham. I like that. Are you an Oxford United fan?
No, that's a very quick answer.
That was a wrong answer, I'm sure.
Okay. Have you ever spun a cricket ball? Allegedly.
Oh.
Yes.
Once. I think I got that. He spun a ball once. That's being honest, isn't it? Brilliant. Somebody's mentioned, are you Richard Dawson?
Cool, that would be a coup, wouldn't it?
Oh, that was exciting. That was for a minute, wasn't it?
It was. It was. A couple more coming in. We're getting loads of questions in, which is absolutely fantastic. 50 consecutive viewers, which is the most we've had. A couple more, Darryl. From Tim Bean. I'm going to expand on this. Do you or have you ever coached cricket?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's coached.
Have you ever played? Oh, this is a good one. Have you ever played cricket for England?
Oh, look, we don't just throw this program together, do we? We do get the stars on. We do it.
We do. Right. We do indeed. Are you from Wiltshire?
So no.
He's not from Wiltshire.
He's not.
So he's not a Swindon fan then, Elliot. So he's not a Swindon fan then. Just put that one out there.
Not a Swindon fan, no. I'm going to ask the question. Do you like cheese?
Grommet.
We ask it every week. Yes. Cider and cheese.
Are you struggling to keep a straight face the way Darryl has dressed? That's a good question.
I'm trying to keep a straight face.
Okay. Another question from Sarah. Are you a coach at Magdalen College School? That would really narrow it down, wouldn't it? No. Elliot Graham's just said if you're not a Swindon fan, you can stay. So that's good. Thank you, Elliot. That's a strange one. Are you a bird watcher?
Oh, okay, interesting. We've had a guess. Are you the legend that is Gary Palmer? No, it'd still be out coaching.
Blimey. James Flory wants to know if you're Graham Swan.
Is that the reference? Because he was a bird watcher and he got Swan. Was that the reference, was it?
I think so. I think it may have been.
No, that's tenuous,
Right.
that. Somebody's put here, I recognise the picture. I know who it is, but I don't know who that is. It's one of your. It must be one of yours, Kieran. No.
No, try and look at the picture. Is he talking about the picture in the background, possibly?
I don't know. It is very possible. It is very possible. Oh, here's another good question. Are you Robert Croft? No, not Robert Croft. This is good. This has got them, Kieran. This has got them tonight.
It has. It has indeed. Yeah. But they're along the right. I mean, I'm going to give a little clue. They're along the right lines, aren't they?
I think they're getting there. I think they're getting there.
Which is impressive. So really good to get so many questions in. Let's have a look if there's anything more coming through. I'm not going to mention that one, Mervyn, because it's a family show. I'll word it politely. Have you had a few drinks tonight?
No.
Very professional.
Very
professional.
He wanted to put yes, I think. Very good. Like it. Are you? Yeah.
Kev Taylor, I don't know if this is a political question or about his cricket. Are you a lefty?
Somebody's asked if you're Ashley Giles, so that really sort of rules that one out. Not Gilo. Did you play at? Did you play at Gloucestershire? Yes.
You'd play at Gloucestershire.
Okay. It's you're not Phil Tufnell then. Not Tuffers. Gloucestershire, I'm assuming right arm off spin bowler. Are you Phil Emery?
I just read that. I just read that on the screen. I could have sworn he'd said, "Are you Dick Emery?" And I thought, no, it's not him. It's not him. Right. A couple more questions. First one is: so you're over 35. Are you over 50? So are you 50? Okay.
Good milestone.
Right. Daryl, your sister-in-law, Leslie Woods, who I know very well, has asked whether this is Tim Hancock.
No. I'm just impressed you got Leslie's name right, Kieran. You actually remembered this week. Well done.
Yeah, it's on the screen in front of me, Daryl, so I didn't really have anything.
I thought you might have written it down.
Big Dog Hump, I know that we get some really good guests, but that would have been quite impressive if we'd have got Jim Laker. I don't think you're Jim Laker, are you, Master Cricketer?
I think that's a definite no. I think, Kieran, I think we're pretty close to knowing who this is, and I think we could probably ask that question, couldn't we? There's a couple more questions have come in which might identify him anyway. We'll say it's a him because we've pretty much ticked that box in terms of first-class cricket. So, have you ever played at Lord's? Played at Lord's.
Okay. Have you ever won a trophy at Lord's? Right, one more question, and then I think we have got an answer. So, have you ever coached for Oxfordshire?
Why not?
Right, we have a guess. We are at 20 past. It's pretty impressive. Is your nickname Benny? Is your nickname Benny? That will do it, won't it?
That'll do it. That'll do it.
So Matthew Lee, I think, is the first person to have asked this. So, are you, by any chance, the legendary Martyn Ball?
It is Martyn Ball. Bally, welcome to the market.
How are we doing?
Very
That's
well.
a
How
while.
are you?
I'm very well. Can you see me?
We can.
See you in all your glory now. Yeah.
How are you guys?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good.
Not too onerous being behind that cardboard for 20 minutes.
No, it was good. You kept me smiling just looking at the clown's outfit. And also, I like Kieran's fancy dress as well.
Yeah. Well,
the Aussie shirt.
Yeah.
Terrible.
A few people at Oxford now think I'm going to give this shirt away to them, but it's going to have money's going to have to exchange hands for me to do that.
Paulie, welcome again to the Mars Cricketer. Thanks for coming on.
No problem, Darren.
My first question to you really is lockdown. How's it been, and what you've been up to, really?
Yeah, it's been tough. I think, like everybody. You mentioned my age just now. I had my 50th birthday during lockdown. I'm quite a sociable character, and 26th of April was my 50th, and it was pretty odd not, being the usual, celebrating with everybody, getting some friends around or whatever, or having a bit of a bash out. I've also, just before lockdown, our middle daughter had our first grandson. And also, thank you. And so we saw him for a few weeks, and then I live down in Devon now. And so she's back in Bristol, and our eldest daughter lives out in Norway. And we've had another grandson during lockdown. So we've had two grandsons within a space of a few weeks. And I think that was probably the toughest thing. Family's quite important, for us all. And, not being able to see them, not being able to get out to Norway. We had it all booked, and we were going out to spend a few weeks there with the grandson. But that's life. We're all safe, we're all sound, and there's a lot of people who obviously aren't during these times. So can't complain. Hair's grown massively. I've tried to pat it down with some hair product and what have you, but I haven't had a haircut since March, start of March. So I think by July, when they open, should be getting the Flymo out.
I think Daryl needs a haircut looking at that today, to be honest. But that's. I think your hair still looks more sensible than Daryl. So we're okay on that one.
I think we'll totally say that. Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. I've just to go on, Bally, obviously your career with Gloucestershire, debut of 1988, I believe.
Yeah.
And county cap in 96, I think. Is that?
Yeah, I think it was. I spent a long time as a young, well, not so much of a young spinner, but I don't know what's going on at Gloucester. In the old days, they used to be quite stingy in handing out their caps, and it was, I think, someone like Tim, who was mentioned earlier on, you tended to go a long time without them. It was all to do with your salary. Once you got a county cap, your salaries would go up. You wouldn't get paid appearance money. And I think they were skint. Well, they still are, but you had to fight to get your cap. Whereas nowadays, you play your first game, you've got your county cap. But in the old days, I think I probably played about 80 first-class matches and whatever.
You had to earn it. You had to earn it back in the day, didn't you? You really did. Yeah, absolutely. Times have changed, haven't they?
For the good. For the good.
For the good. Yeah, I agree. I do agree. So quite successful career at Gloucestershire. Obviously, you had we had Rob Cunliffe back a few weeks ago, spoke about the Lord's finals, but it was a little bit more than that, wasn't it? Because there was Benson and Hedges and the NatWest, or what it was called in those days as well, and it was quite a successful run, wasn't it?
They were some glory years. Like you pointed out, I made my debut 1988, and for us during the 90s, it was a team that we had a good team. You know, when I first joined, sort of 88, made my debut. Sid Lawrence, Kevin Curran, Courtney Walsh. You know, we were pushing. Didn't win the championship, but we were up in the late 80s. We were up there as a team. Come runners up, came third without ever winning it. And when we got to sort of the late 90s, for us, I probably only played in sort of 2 quarterfinals of a one-day knockout. And you watch all these Lords finals, never, you know, quarterfinal was a big game and we lost them. But suddenly in 99, we won the 2 knockout one day as it was the Benson Hedges and the Nat West. That had only ever been done by Lancashire. So only one other team had ever done the knockout double. And then we retained them the following year and done the double again, which had never been done. But on top of that, we won the Sunday League as well, the one-day league. So we won all 3 one-day trophies. So 99, 2000 were quite special years. We got on a roll, and it just seemed that, you know, every week was a quarter final for one competition or a semi-final, then a Lord's final, then big games leading into winning the one-day league as well. And in some ways, the 4-day stuff got not purposely pushed to one side, but with a small squad, it was quite hard to deliver in all forms of the game. And as you know, the rewards of one-day cricket, we did become quite a specialist one-day team.
And Borley, you actually Gloucestershire developed a reputation, didn't you, as not necessarily one-day specialist, but you were near unbeatable in one-day cricket. I think you had a run at home where you just never lost at home for a long period of time.
Yeah, there was that obviously that period. We had some good draws in that competition, like you say, home semi-finals and what have you. And I played my England under-19s team was quite a team that a lot of guys went on to sort of be, you know, England greats as such. And, you know, they would, when we played against them, that sort of team, the Gough, Dominic Cork, Mark Ramprakash, Nick Knight, they would all, especially the Yorkies, they would get a little bit wound up having to come to Bristol and say, yeah, but if we got you at Headingley, you know, you type of comment. So it was quite nice. I think it was in 2001 that we actually won one of the semi-finals at Headingley, or 2000, and with Darren Lehman in their team, Gough, Vaughan. You know, we beat them in the final of the B&H, the first one in '99. So we got a bit of a reputation, the sort of you know fortress Bristol type of thing. But we were just a good unit, well drilled unit, no superstars, and relied on, you know, the team aspect really.
I was going to say, actually, that was my next question. So in that side, yes, you had a couple of what you would class as superstars moving forwards, but actually during that period, it was kind of the way you gelled as a team, wasn't it? It wasn't sort of one person that you would rely on each week. It was a collective of all 11 players that took to the field, and you never really knew when you were beaten.
Absolutely, we had. It was quite a bold move. John Bracewell came in as coach in, I think it was '98, and one of the first things he did was actually not. So Courtney Walsh was our overseas, and Courtney was an absolute legend, as we know. You know, one of the greatest overseas players ever to have played for somebody. You know, he went on at that stage then within a few years to be the number 1 Test wicket taker at the time, overtaken by the spinners Warne and Muralitharan, you know, during the late 90s and early 2000s. But John made that call to not have Courtney Walsh back. He had 1 year, and everybody just couldn't believe, in some ways, what he was doing. But it was to change that emphasis. I think for many, many years, if ever there was a game to be won, we would always rely on Courtney. We would, yes, Jack Russell was a great, and we had Jack in the team, but the ball was thrown to Courtney. If we had to win a game, Courtney would have the ball, and he would win it. And on some occasions, you know, we relied on him too much, and he didn't win it. And he was unbelievable. He was fantastic. But then he made this decision to bring in Ian Harvey, who at the time not a lot of people had known. He was playing some one-day cricket for Australia, but you never felt in bringing him Harvey would win a game with the bat or with the ball. He actually did many times, but it was that element of us having to be a team, not just relying on one player to win us a game, and actually, all 11 players at moments. If you're batting at the time, you win the game. If you're bowling at the time, you win the game. And it took that emphasis away from we had to rely on Courtney, and it obviously worked. The proof was in the pudding.
It was a super run. You mentioned there, you alluded to Jack Russell being one of the greats. I know the story. You travelled with Jack quite a bit, and there's a great story with Jack, I'm sure.
Well, Jack was just a nutter. For those that, I've just seen one of the comments. Well done, Merv. Jack was. The perception of Jack probably was bigger than what he was actually like. He was a grubby, horrible man. An absolute legend. We all love him, and I'm big mates. We still stay in touch. And the funny thing is, we spoke last night about as a pre for this, and we were chatting about him. But he's texted me today out of the blue. I haven't spoken to him for months, and it's just bizarre how he's texted me today to mention a couple of bits, and just out of the blue anyway. But I digress. He was a bit of a grubby, horrible man. His car was just disgusting. There'd be paint everywhere, old wrappers, and he liked to paint this sort of perception to everybody that he was quite, blindfold people to get to his house, and all a pack of lies. All a pack of lies. It was just really built up to have this sort of illusion of him being a real eccentric, and in some ways he was probably the other way. He was, he wasn't that eccentric at all. And no, but he was one of the finest. I would struggle to name a better wicketkeeper. We would be here all night arguing whether Alan Knott was better or Bob Taylor was better. But certainly, Jack was up there with the best the world's ever had.
Yeah, I agree.
We've had some comments coming in, Borley. So we've had one comment from somebody that's clearly a Gloucester fan. He's actually said, if it hadn't have been for the likes of yourself, Steamy, Jack and Smudge, he would have never got involved in cricket. So, the fact that you've played first-class cricket, and you do, professional cricketers, it's the same as football, you do inspire youngsters. And I know that the person that's made this comment would have been very young at the time that you were sort of playing, because I think he's only 30 odd now, so it would have been probably 10 years old. So the feeling, the thought that you and your teammates inspire young cricketers, it's really important, isn't it? Not just you're playing professional cricket, you are role models, aren't you, for others? Absolutely.
And for the modern day player, even more so, the amount of television coverage that you get, and it's great to hear that. When I was 13, 14, even younger, wanted to play sport, you had people you looked up to. You went out in the street. For me, it wasn't just cricket. I enjoyed my rugby, my football, and the likes of Kevin Keegan and what have you at the time were huge heroes. And so if anybody, while we were going through that sort of trot of winning the one-day games, drew the kids in, and perhaps their dad took them to Lords for one of those finals, and they got the bug, well, that's great to hear. And something it makes you feel proud now as an old man.
Not that old. Daryl's old. Just talking about the start of your career, Borley. So cricket wasn't your first sort of choice, was your first love. I think you mentioned, sort of alluded to earlier. You started actually more of a rugby player, a scrum half, I think you said, and sort of cricket came to you relatively late in terms of development. I think you were sort of mid to late teens before it really took off for you. Just tell us a little bit about that and the choices you made.
Well, like a lot of kids back in the 80s, I just loved sport. I just wanted to be playing sport from the age of 5 and 6. You're kicking the ball around. When you're sort of 10, 11, 12, your parents can't find you because you're over the park playing football, rugby. When Wimbledon was on, you'd pick up a tennis racket and hit a tennis ball. I just wanted to be playing sport all the time. And to an element, with a bit of success. I played for scrum half for Bristol for sort of under 14s, under 15s, under 16s, and then you make that jump to Colts, which I thought was a huge jump, you know, from sort of being under 16s rugby to then under 19s. Was a huge, and playing at that level, I think it proved the point. I wasn't obviously tough enough and what have you. Football, I played all through sort of the age groups locally in Bristol. Got picked for Bristol Boys a bit, went to the Rovers for a bit. But again, probably at 16, 17, the reality is you're not good enough. And it was round about that time, you know, I didn't necessarily choose cricket. Cricket more chose me in the way that everything I was doing with cricket was suddenly getting an opportunity to. I was playing for, you know, under 16s, under 17s for the Gloucester Cricket Board. And they sent 3 people off down to the West of England trials. And I was gobsmacked. I was gobsmacked to be playing for them, let alone getting picked as one of the 3 to go down. You go down to that, and suddenly you then come the summer, you played for the West. Couldn't believe it, you know, but get some wickets, get a few runs, hold a few catches, and then ended up being in the England schools team. And suddenly at 17, it was one of those things where, wow, I was, you know, all my mates, when we left school at 16, if they didn't know what you were doing, would have probably said, if you told them you played professional sport at a later date, I think probably 80% of them would have said rugby, and then maybe sort of 15% football, and I think probably only 5% would have guessed cricket, because at 15, 16, it wasn't. I was playing for Downend in the Western League at about 16, but yeah, just the cricket took off, and before you know it, the guys you mentioned heroes, the guys in. I can remember watching Bill Athy, and I think it was the '86 sort of series out when we won the Ashes in Australia. As a 16-year-old, thinking, God, that was amazing, you know, watching that, and then 18 months later, 2 years later, you're making your debut, and you know, in that team, so in the Gloucestershire team.
And Bill Athy's quite important in your career, but I think before we move on to that, I mean, you had the experience when you got into so you got for the Gloucestershire representative side, you got into the second 11 with Gloucestershire, and you experienced something there which I experience every week, which is batting 11 and not bowling, which tended to be the case with me, because that's I was like filling the numbers really. But from there, you actually Bill Athy saw something in you that he liked, didn't he? And he was the one, I think, that gave you the first real chance to sort of prove yourself.
Well, sort of him and David Graveney as well. David Graveney was captain at the time, and Bill Athy was vice captain, and it was sort of one of the things the coaches that were involved at the time. I got back in the days then, in sort of 1988, the second team would always, you know, the team would have maybe 4 or 5 guys at university that were on the staff. So the first couple of games of the year for the reserves, the second team at Gloucester, you would always sort of be short of a couple of players. So they would pick some people out of club cricket, but they would be cast away once we got into sort of late June and July, and the uni guys were back. So again, I got a game. Bizarrely enough, I had an Avon Schools game. I went in with the lad who was captain in Avon Schools, who was playing in the second team, a lad called Andrew Chidgey. And they were short, I think, 2 days later against Glamorgan for a one-day game. And I was in there bowling, and the second team coach at the time was a guy called Graham Wiltshire. And he sort of said, "Oh, what are you doing Wednesday?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Do you want to play for the Gloucester Seconds against Glamorgan?" Of course, at 18, you're going to say, love to. And exactly that. I didn't bat, didn't bowl. And I think they were short for a three-day game 2 days later. So I got a game in that, got a couple of wickets. And by the time the uni lads came back, I was sort of playing regularly. And like you say, you then get, I wasn't a staff, I wasn't a contracted player, but you got that opportunity then being around, you know, if there was no second team game, but it was a home first team game, you'd go in the nets and bowl. And obviously, you know, Bill Athy, that's where I got the nickname Benny. You know, Bill Athy generally gave out the nicknames. He took me under his wing a bit, and thought, you know, I was the little one in the pack. So he called me Benny the Ball out of Top Cat, the little one. And yes, so that stuck. And yeah, he was a big influence on my career. You know, he was a. You had to respect him. He opened the batting in that '86 series with Chris Broad when they beat the Aussies in Australia, and you know, he was a very fine player, tight as anything as a Yorkshireman, but a really good player.
Yeah. Yeah, no, had the privilege of meeting him around the boundary when he was coaching for Herefordshire under 17s, actually. So some good stories from Bill. We obviously alluded to the fact, we asked the question if you had played for England. So
that was a one where I needed a sort of instead of just a straight yes or no.
Could you just allude to the fact what happened to you? Because you obviously toured in 2001 and 2 to India as a replacement for Robert Croft. Can you just tell us what that was like and how that tour went for you?
Firstly, you know, it was to get called up. It was you know, I'll never forget it. You know, amazing opportunity. It was just after 9/11. The side had been picked. We'd had a good year for Gloucester. I think I'd had a good all-round year that year. Playing for Gloucester was quite hard to take 60, 70, 80 wickets because we generally played on more of a seamer's wicket. But I sort of had a good all-round season. I held all my catches. It slipped. I think I got sort of 600-700 runs at 32, 33 apiece, and 40 odd wickets at 32 apiece or 30 apiece. So it wasn't necessarily an amazing, like I took 80 wickets and put the heat on Croft or Giles. But it was a case that 9/11 happened, the world changed, and the England team were suddenly had a worry about touring. The India, obviously, it was a big tour for them financially. They were promising unbelievable sort of protection and what have you. So everybody wanted the tour to go ahead, but the players were a bit nervous about it, thinking, you know, are they a terrorist target in a place like India after 9/11? So the boys all sat round, but two players decided not to tour, and that was Robert Croft, who I don't think ever played again, and Andy Caddick. So they called up Richard Johnson of Middlesex, and who went on to Somerset and what have you, and myself to replace those two. So it was, you know, in getting picked there, yeah, it wasn't that, you know, you weren't first choice, but injuries happen all the time and things like that. So I was obviously over the moon and getting picked. But it was a bit of a different tour. You know, we had, from the time we landed in Mumbai, and to get us to the hotel, they closed. There's a famous hotel that was actually attacked by terrorists a year later. It's called the Taj Hotel. Right next to I think it's called the Gateway to India in Mumbai, great big archway. It's 1,100 bedrooms, but they closed the whole hotel just for us to stay there, and it was mad. We had sort of 6, 7 SAS guys travel with us, who 3 would stay with us. The next 4 would go to the next venue, wherever we were going to next, to sort out with the army and the police, you know, how, you know, the sort of protection was going to be carried out and how we were going to get from the airport to the hotel. And it was really bizarre because you think how busy a city like Mumbai is, and we got off the plane, no customs, no collecting bags. We just got straight on a coach, walked down the steps of the plane on a coach, and every junction you came to, every roundabout, every traffic lights, the army, there was tanks, you know, holding the traffic, the people, and we just, so that we didn't stop, I suppose, and become a sitting target. And the whole tour was like that, so we weren't allowed to go anywhere, see anything. So in that way, it was quite bizarre. But having, you know, never been picked for England before, to be part of that tour, to see, you know, Duncan Fletcher in action, you know, to work with the lads. Later in the tour, it was the start of really Freddie Flintoff getting back involved. He'd been picked a few times. He wasn't picked originally in the squad, but Graham Thorpe come home. And I think by that time, it was just before the first test, and we'd seen that the balance of the side, the way it was. So even though Thorpe, he wasn't replaced like for like, Freddie came out and played all 3 tests, and that was the start of Freddie really, you know, becoming a an established figure in that team.
And Martyn, although you didn't end up playing a test match, you did actually play in some of the warm-up games, didn't you? I know there are others on the tour that didn't play at all, but I think you played and did okay in one of the warm-up games up in Chandigarh, up in the north of India.
The first test match was in Chandigarh. It was, I'm trying to think where we were, where the game was played. I think it might have been Mumbai. But against I ended up bizarrely. I am one of those sort of oddities where some games on an England tour might not be a first class game if they were playing 15 players or what have you. But I think it was against the President's 11, and then we had the President's 11, then India A, and then the first test. And in the President's 11 game, I got, I think, 3 for 80 odd, and in the first innings, I think we got bowled out for sort of 240. I got 20 odd, but in the second innings, I ended up batting for about 3 hours to stop us from getting an embarrassing defeat, and got again 20 odd not out, maybe sort of 26 not out. So I came back off that tour. That was a first class game. So I've got runs in wickets and catches for England, but obviously I didn't play in the test matches, so 0 tests. So when it comes to number, I've got my England jumpers, I've got my England caps, I've got my, in the frame, but I don't get given a number because I didn't play in a test match. But I have in my career, wickets for England, and I think I actually topped the batting and bowling averages on that tour with only playing one game. So there were like a modern day tour. There wasn't many games before the lead up to the first test. So I didn't play in the first game, played in the second, and then I actually broke my finger in sort of warm up for the game before the first test against India A, which I would have played in, but I sat out because obviously the first test was more important and Ashley Giles wasn't fit. So it was more of one of those decisions, right? You can't take the risk, even though you feel you could play. We can't take the risk because if you've got the problem with a broken finger, as we all know, is it's just down to the pain. So if it wasn't I broke as a slip fielder fingers all the time, and some of them you think I can't play with that because it's just so painful. But then another one you might not really feel at all. But the worry is that if you get a whack on it and it misplaces the fracture, then you have to have it pinned and you'd be out for the rest of the tour. So the decision was made not to play, and in some ways it probably hindered me because Richard Dawson, we both played in the first in the game in Mumbai, and he got none for 100. I got 3 for 80 odd. So in the next game, Dawes had to play. He bowled all right. He bowled well, and obviously it was the right decision to. We only went in with one spinner, and then if it had been anywhere else, I would have played because Giles wasn't fit, and you'd have always played 2 spinners in India. But Chandigarh up north is probably the only place where you might consider going in with only the one spinner, and we did, and we got beat.
We mentioned, didn't we, when we sort of spoke yesterday about being left out of that, and how Duncan Fletcher actually handled that situation. Can you allude to how you felt and how you thought he handled the situation in that situation? Yeah.
Well, in that first test match, like anybody, I think there was a touring party of 16 or 17. So 6 lads are left out. Everybody wants to play the first test. And so everyone's going to be disappointed. But there's a test series to win. It's like a lot of things. There was a good team ethic, and it's about the team. It's not about the individuals. But I think a chap called Usman Afzal had sort of broken into the England team the previous summer. But he was left out. Warren Hegg, and they hadn't played in any of the warm-up games. So, because like I said, there was only 3 warm-up games leading into that first test match. So suddenly they chose, with the wicketkeeper, they chose James Foster over Warren Hegg. And I think Warren at that point probably knew, I haven't played a game yet. And now, unless Foster gets injured with a 3 test match series, how am I going to play? And 7-8 weeks in India then was a long time. For me, it was slightly different because, one, I'd never been involved in the squad before. So to be there was you know, a fantastic experience anyway. But I sort of knew I was disappointed. I could understand why they went with Dawson that first test. You know, Yorkshire had won the championship. Dawson had a great season. We were huge underdogs to go and win in India. I'm not saying as a test team you've got to, you know, you're defeatist, but it's the right decision to say, right, you know, we've got a 22-year-old here. Not, you know, yes, Ball is a safe bet at 31. He's been around the block. He's a good cricketer, but I wasn't the future of England spin bowling at the time, whereas Richard Dawson could have been. He didn't turn out to be, and he, you know, good mate of mine and what have you, but he could have been. At 22, he could have been. So it was the right decision, and you know, we didn't know whether Giles would be fit for the second test, so it was very much a case of Duncan, rather than just being left to fester. Duncan and Nasser would, you know, communicated really well with me in the way that, look, don't just turn off, train hard, you know, make sure you're on top of your game, because you weren't selected in this. It was a tough decision to make because you'd out-bowled Dawes. We're probably going to be a stronger team today with you, but we have to go, you know, we have to go this way. It's the right decision. And if Giles isn't fit for the second test, the rest of India, everywhere else in India, we're going to be playing at least 2 spinners. So we went into the second test. Giles was fit, but all the way up to that, you know, you think you could be playing, and on the day of the game, you're a bit disappointed in a way that Gilo was fit. And even then, Duncan was brilliant, because he probably wasn't so good to, like I said, the other characters who knew that, God, this tour's dragging on now, and I've not played a game. But he was very much, look, especially as the second test evolved, and we lost the first test, drew the second test. So there was a test series to sort of level, and it would have been a great achievement for us to have drawn that series. So it was very much, look, we may even, at the minute, is in our thinking, go into this third test. If we're going to win it, we're not going to win it with our seam bowlers. So we have to bowl them out twice. And the only way we're going to bowl them out twice is with spin. So we nearly went in with the three of us. We didn't, but it just keeps you focused. You could look at it after and think, oh, well, was he just one? But I know from, like you do, you chat to the lads, you're mates with everybody. So I knew he didn't say hardly a word to Warren Head, because what could he say? Warren is reserve keeper, and as Foster was injured, he wasn't going to play. And I think it was a long tour for a few more like that. And also, from my perspective, I was also one of those people that during my career, I loved fielding. You know, I made the slip fielding sort of a specialist area for myself. So there was, I can remember one day in the second test, Vaughan is a useless. I know he was a great captain in later stages, but he was a useless fielder. For a bloke that was a batsman, Vaughan was useless in the field. So he had a bit of Delhi belly in the second test, and straight away, Nasser, Vaughan, get to the toilet and get Bally on. So I come straight, and I caught Ganguly at slip off Flintoff in that game, and we came off it sort of tee, and Nasser, Vaughan, sort of like starting, but he said, right, I'm all right now, Nasser. You know, I've been on the toilet for a couple of hours, I'm fine. And Nasser went, no, you're not. Just get in that toilet. You're not coming out. Ball is coming out, and what have you. So I want in it slip, and so on. So, you know, that way you felt a part of, you know, even though we managed to get the draw and take the series into the third test. So I felt part of that tour, even though I didn't play. You know, leading up to wickets and took a catch in one of the games as well. So.
And Bobby, in terms of your slip fielding, you mentioned this a couple of times. You had the privilege, I suppose it would be a privilege, of standing at slip to one of if not the greatest fast bowlers the world's ever seen in Courtney Walsh, and also obviously David Lawrence. Sadly his career was cut short with that horrendous injury, but standing at slip to Courtney Walsh, and we spoke to Rob Cunliffe a couple of weeks ago. Courtney Walsh ran through a brick wall for Gloucestershire just as he was for West Indies. But it must have been for you an absolute privilege to see poetry in motion. Somebody of that caliber, running in, steaming in for Gloucestershire, bowling at 95 miles an hour, and you were pretty successful at slip, weren't you?
Yeah, I think it comes from the other sports. Again, Gloucestershire, when we became that good one-day team, we really focused on the fielding aspect and how we could get, extra 5% out of people, and because as a team, those 5% all add up. But I could never understand how people hated fielding when I was 15, 16, 17, and people go, oh God, got to go out and field now. I would think you spend half your game in the field. So if you're not going to enjoy fielding, that's half of your game. Why are you playing? I can understand people, a fast bowler who stands down at third man, I could understand him at times switching off on the odd occasion and what have you, and thinking, but I wouldn't allow myself to at 15, 16, 17 and so on. And then when I first got into professional career, to be left out of I wanted to be in the game. So I wanted to, start off maybe fielding the covers, and if I could push some of the old blokes out from slick to get a go, I wanted to, because I wanted to be in the mix. And so very quickly, I would work really hard at it in training. Became, you need to get that chance as well. So once got the chance to field it slip, pushed a few of the Jerry Lloyd's the umpire now. I managed to push Jerry out. Jerry was left out of a game. He used to field it slip, and I went in there, and I think it was against I made my debut against Sri Lanka, but the next time they toured, I think it was against them. Sort of, I was about 21, 22. And in the game, I think I had 5 chances, took all 5. And suddenly the next championship game, Jerry was recalled. And it was a case of, Jerry, can you drop down to third man, please? And I can remember seeing his face, Bally going to slip. It caused a few problems, but, that might be. But to watch Courtney run in, it was poetry in motion, like you said, to stand there. And probably on top of that, to get praise from somebody that great on how good he thought I was. I was a very average bowler. I was a very average batter. But if I did have to blow smoke up myself, I knew what I was doing at slip. It would be something I'd hang my hat on and say, yeah, I was a decent slipper.
We've had some good questions coming in while we've been reminiscing on your career. First of all, we're just going to ask one from Mervyn, just around the Lord's Taverners, because this is one of the reasons we're doing this. So obviously, we're looking to try and raise some money for the Lord's Taverners. Darryl is pointing to the bottom there. If anybody would like to go to that link and donate something, fantastic. But if you can't do it now, the link is on the page. Tell us a bit about your involvement yourself with the Lord's Taverners and some of the legendary tours that I gather you've been on.
Firstly, whilst you're playing, you don't get many days off in the summer, and even more so now than ever, the coaches really do sort of take control of your life. Of where you can play, what you can do. Back in my day, we did have a little bit more freedom. If we were given 2-3 days off, we could go off and do something like play a game for the Lord's Taverners, etc. So while I was playing, I got introduced to the charity, not necessarily knowing what they did, but by their fundraising team, which they're sort of, they call it their Celebrity 11, whether it's actors, whether it's musicians, guys off the telly, as well as a few cricketers. And it's a fantastic charity. The work they do for disadvantaged children all over the country. It's not just about the minibuses you see on the road. They do so much for, like you say, disadvantaged children all over the country, whether the disadvantage is as a handicap, whether the disadvantage is coming from the inner city and perhaps a not such frugal upbringing, whatever. They do so much. And it was a charity then that became very close to my heart. So I would always try, whilst I was playing, to at least give up a day to go and play in one of those games, because you see it for the cricketers ourselves. We loved not just the big names. There's big names that have played for the Taverners over the years, like an Eric Clapton and a Mick Jagger, and what have you. It wasn't just about those people. But it's great meeting a guy from another sport. If you've got a guy's playing professional rugby or football or a skier or whatever, as well as the guys you see on the telly. A great mate of mine now is not necessarily the biggest name in television. He does Place in the Sun and a lad called Johnny Irwin. But you watch John, he just loves playing with the guys he's seen on the telly. And then when you turn on the telly during the afternoon and he's presenting A Place in the Sun, yeah, he isn't Mick Jagger. But he is. You would never met the guy. He is a great guy, and he'll do anything for the charity. And it is, it's about, we raise, I think, about £4 million a year as a charity, and there's so many projects that are able to be run for disadvantaged kids all over the country. It's been really close to my heart, so much so that I think it was probably about 5-6 years, well, longer than that, because I gave it up for about 18 months, 2 years. But I took over as chairman of cricket. I'm trying to think when that would be. Probably back around sort of 2011, 2012. And it's a purely voluntary role, but it was great being involved. And we would, as chairman of cricket, you'd be oversee a committee that plays probably about 18 games a year all around the country. Some huge events which have been known to raise 100,000 at a time, to some small events that raise 8 or 10,000. But all of that money, goes to, like we say, not just the minibuses, but to be able to fund huge projects, like the table cricket, etc. And it's just when you go along to those events and you see the good that it's doing and what good that the charity does, it's just a privilege to be part of, and has been for so many years. But we do also get a few perks out of it. We've had a few overseas tours, where I've been to Antigua and Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but it's all been, they're the perks, I suppose, for giving up so much of your time. But I would do it without any of those trips anyway. It is a great charity.
I mean, we had the pleasure, Darren and I, and a lot of others, as I mentioned at the start of this chat, we had the pleasure of meeting a young lad by the name of George Hiley, who is such an inspiration. He's so infectious, his attitude, and he clearly loves the game. We were only too pleased when we were asked to sort of do this in aid of a charity. Lord's Taverners is really close to our hearts now, and I mean, we're not expecting to raise millions of pounds, and as you said, it's not necessarily about raising huge amounts of money, but it's raising awareness of what the Lord's Taverners do. And I must confess, until sort of relatively recently, I was not somebody that knew everything about the Lord's Taverners, but looking into what they do and the opportunities they provide, I think that it's a charity that is definitely close to my heart. Now, I might even consider, because I am losing a bit of weight, I might even consider doing something for charity, maybe not a London marathon, but something, because I don't want to sort of end my days on a London marathon. But no, it is a fantastic charity, and and the opportunities that are being provided through the Lord's Taverners, and we're hoping to support Oxfordshire Disability Cricket through Dick Giles, who's the head of Oxfordshire Disability Cricket. And it's wonderful that people like yourself and as you say, all the stars that sort of get involved in this. It's just a great cause. Daryl is once again my
plugging it.
Delectable model. He's pointing down to the bottom of the screen. A few other questions have come in just about your cricket, Borley. So a good question. We get this asked quite a lot. So you've obviously played a lot of first-class cricket. Who would you say is the best player that you've actually faced on a cricket field in a competitive game?
Because I made my debut in the 80s, I think if you go through, I managed by playing in the late 80s and the start of the 90s, there was a huge sort of barrage of West Indian fast bowlers through the 80s, and they all played county cricket. So if you go back, Malcolm Marshall, obviously Courtney, Curtly Ambrose, and they were I played against, with or against those. Some of the early ones like Joel Garner, Andy Roberts. I played against Michael Holding. They were sort of around sort of mid 80s and before that. But you always come across some, great fast bowlers. One little story I like to tell is that Alan Donald. The second team, when you played in the second team back in the 80s, you'd have 2 overseas players, but only one could play in the first team. So at the time, Warwickshire, for instance, had a West Indian who only played a few Test matches called Tony Merrick, and a young Alan Donald. So if they chose to play Tony Merrick, Alan Donald would still play in the second team. Up at Lancashire one year, they had Patrick Patterson and Wasim Akram. So when you played a second team game, if you're an 18-year-old turning up, you'd play against one of them. Which, again, that was sort of an amazing experience. So if you go through sort of the county cricket they would all come. Everybody would come. You would have, trying to name them all, but I think Alan Donald was at one stage the quickest bowler in the world, and he was quite frightening. He actually knocked my tooth out. This one here knocked it clean out, which is a story I like to tell because people obviously say, how did he do it? And I said, well, it just hit me flush in the mouth, and it's like, oh God, did it go through your helmet? And I said, no, I wasn't wearing a helmet. And they're like, why were you not wearing a helmet to Alan Donald? And the answer is because I never ever bowled in a helmet. He was batting, and he chipped back a couple of balls, and I dived full length, and it landed just in front of my fingers and knocked my tooth out. So my claim to fame is Alan Donald knocked my tooth clean out.
You had us there, Borley, definitely.
Brian Lara, what a player he was. I was very fortunate, that through the late 80s, early 90s, all of the greatest players in the world, Tendulkar, I got him out playing for Yorkshire. It's hard to say, Warney played a lot. The funny thing about Warney is we're the same age, and even though he's that superstar of world cricket, he had a big connection to Bristol. When I was the same age as Warney, well, we've always been the same age, funnily enough, but he came. I made my debut that year for 88. He came to England that summer and played in Bristol. So he was a club cricketer for a club called Imperial, and there's a few guys at Imperial that looked after him and what have you. So he had a real sort of close connection with them. And then but he slept at the ground and above the changing rooms at Imperial for quite a while. And we used to play even though the Imperial ground was actually in Somerset, that side of the river, we played a couple of second team games at the Imperial Club. So he was there watching and chatting to us as the lads, this Aussie playing for Imperial, played against him in club cricket. And then that winter I did the same. I went out and played in Melbourne. And that winter, he started in the third team at St Kilda, but by the end of the summer, he got picked for Australia to tour and what have you. So he was an absolute great. Yeah, he would come back to Bristol, and just a great guy to know and would never forget. It's not like you played 20 Test matches against him, but he'd never forget the days when you were young lads sort of together. And the way you sort of looked after him over here, but it's just a shame they don't seem to do it so much now. The greats are too busy at the IPL, at the Big Bash, and they don't get to play like they did in the old days when they would form relationships and friendships and have that affinity with a club because they'd played like Courtney for years, for the same club. So I think that's a bit of a shame you can't do that now. But like all things move on.
I want to come in. We're close to finishing. We've gone past the hour, Borley, and we really thank you for your contribution and spending time with us tonight. That is really well appreciated, and some great stories there. There's a couple of things I wanted to finish on. The first one, I'll let you have a think. If you had a superpower, what would it be? I'll come back on that one. But you also chaired the PCA from 2001 to 2007. And I just think people watching may not understand what that's about and what your sort of roles and responsibilities would have been during that stay of office. So can you just give us a bit of background on the PCA?
Yeah, the PCA is the union, obviously, that represents the professional cricketers in the UK. It was also quite prevalent in making sure, especially in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, that as the sort of money and the television money was coming into the game, it wasn't just going to look after the elite few. It's there to provide, professional support, education. It could be legal advice for someone going out of the game with an injury, and what have you. Really to look after the welfare of not just that top few that are earning, big sums of money playing for England or playing out in the IPL, but looking after the guys that maybe have given up quite a lot to try to get to that level, but it may be at 24 have fallen by the wayside and not made it. And it's I've got lots of friends that have done it, and as chairman of the union for many years, saw a lot of people fall upon hard times. It can be many things. It can be addiction. There's addiction, whether it be gambling, drugs, alcohol. It's not always the pretty story of seeing the elite playing for England and having the successes that bring, and they deserve. There's also a lot of a lot of sad stories, should we say, in professional sport that that people go through, and a lot of hard times. So as a union, they were the more important things. Rather than seeing guys, which happened for years, give up a lot and get to 26 and not really crack it, and then not really have anything to go to, making sure that they put time and effort in during those times, especially when the guys are young, sort of 20 to 24, that what are you going to do when you finish playing? If we can help provide educational courses or vocational courses that provide them with a trade, it's great if they end up playing for England and getting the riches and that go with that. But if they don't, they've given up a lot to try and fulfill their dreams. So I did that from 2001 till I finished in 2006 and developed my superpower.
We'll give you 2 more minutes to think about it. Just final question from me. So you mentioned, helping support players, what they're going to do once they retire. Some players obviously retire and continue in cricket through coaching, through commentating, managing sides. You had a different sort of end to your career. You've actually totally changed your career, haven't you? And just tell us about what you decided to do and how that came about once you finished your playing career.
It was quite a lucky break, really. With the union themselves, if you take the big sponsors in cricket, I think one thing that we realised, there's a chap, I was chairman, started at the same time, the new chief executive was a guy called Richard Bevan, who now looks after all the football managers. He's head of that union. And Rich was a very forward-thinking, proactive guy. And I think he realised more so than cricketers themselves that the big sponsors in cricket weren't, somebody makes that decision. The head of Vodafone, if he likes his sailing, he sponsors, they sponsor the America's Cup type of thing. And it won't be totally the element of we get great coverage and great value for money. It's that the chief executive of Vodafone at the time loves his sailing. So you suddenly find that they're spending money on that. I think the same with cricket. Is a bigger sport, but all the heads of these companies aren't just doing it for the coverage and the value they get at the time. It's probably because they've got a bit of a soft spot for cricket, or if they're sponsoring football. And he sort of noticed that, and those big companies that were involved with the ECB sponsoring, they didn't want to go there and sit in a box just with the ECB officials. They actually wanted to meet Freddie Flintoff and Nasser Hussain and Alex Stewart. So it was during an era where that was being expanded more and more by the union, and we were bringing in the sponsors, and we were helping the ECB give value to these sponsors by saying, okay, you're in for £2 million a year as England's main sponsor, but we'll ensure that you get 50 England player you get the use to say 50 times a year to have England players, whether it's in your box or come along to an event that Vodafone are putting on or what have you. And that meant the levels of sponsorship went up because they wanted to be involved, but it also meant that we had some bargaining power to get that, some money into the union to do good, very much like the Lord's Taverns for the disadvantaged children. It was the element of getting money into to provide services to the less privileged professional cricketers that were on hard times or to provide these training courses. So it was an era where we were spending a lot more time with some sort of big flyers, and completely out of the blue, somebody, because I was chairman of the union, sat on various boards in sport with the rugby, Gordon Taylor from the football. There were people you knew because you sat on the same committee 4 or 5 times a year with them. I got an American golf developer, a huge company in the States that were in 2006 it spent over $100 million on their sponsorship of sport in the US, and they wanted someone in the UK to get involved with them. I knew nothing about property development or golf course, golf resort development, etc. But they wanted a European sales director to get involved with them, who had a sporting connection. So it was bizarre. It was during a boom time for property, and so I packed in everything to the PCA and play, and I'd signed a contract to play for Gloucester for 2007. But I knew, my days were done. I was 36, 37. I didn't have another 10 years left in cricket. I might have played for another 2 or so, but this was my next opportunity. And then sort of life evolved. I worked for them for a few years out in the States, and now got a lovely role with a development company down in the southwest, down in Dartmouth, and we're building houses down in Dartmouth, Salcombe, and the surrounding areas, and it's lovely, nice and peaceful. I'm not jumping on planes and trains and enjoying life.
It's a lovely part of the world.
Well. Building houses to building innings to building houses.
Good tagline, Kieran. Good tagline. Borley, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for your honesty as well tonight. I think that's shone through, and you're doing yourself down a little bit because I think you've had quite an illustrious career, to be fair, looking at the stats. So again, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
It's been educational as well. So please stick with us before we end the broadcast. But Kieran, before I do my normal signing off, is there anything else you wanted to add tonight?
Well, we haven't had his superpower yet, so we'll get his superpower from him before we end.
Superpower.
So, load of time.
Superpower would probably have to be able to read people's minds. If I had a superpower, because I've been married for 30 years and I haven't got a clue what she's thinking.
Is she watching?
Good luck trying to read Daryl's mind dressed like that. I think Mervyn says that your superpower should be a never-ending cider drinker, so that's quite a good one.
I've already done that.
Just one very last question before we sign off. I've asked this a few weeks. I asked it to Rob a couple of weeks back as well. If you had one piece of advice, because I know a lot of young cricketers, particularly through Oxfordshire, watch this. We've had loads of people watching tonight. If you had one piece of advice for a young up-and-coming cricketer, 13, 14, 15, that really had the ambition to try and make it in cricket, what would that one piece of advice be? I mean, that's putting you on the spot a bit, but I think it's
pretty simple, really. I think old-fashioned cricket was too much about honing a technique, you know, always playing safe. I think if you're trying to bowl spin it hard. Just try and spin it. If you bowl a bad ball, you bowl a bad ball. As a young, just keep spinning the ball hard. Try and spin it in, whether you're a leggy, you know, the accuracy comes. The more you bowl. If you're bowling quick, charge in and bowl it quick. You know, if you're a batsman, don't be scared, especially with the one that hit the ball. You know what I mean? If your left arm is not quite there, you know, the old as you move forward, you know, you hone those techniques, but do the things what you're there to do. Hit the ball if you're batting, bowl quick if you're bowling seamer, spin it hard, and then most of all enjoy it. If you've had a bad day, trust me, I had loads of bad days, but I would always be one to have a pint after, and tomorrow's another day.
Quite right.
Well, that's amazing, because that almost some of the stuff that you often say, Daryl. Play your natural game, be natural, and enjoy what you do. I think, funnily enough, I was watching a rerun of one of the T20s this morning, and the commentator was talking about Adil Rashid when he was relatively young, and they actually said exactly that. Adil Rashid, maybe not always the most accurate, but come in and spin it hard and do what you're there to do. And yeah, it won't always come off. I mean, Shane Warne, I think, went none for 180 in his first match. He didn't do too badly, did he?
Exactly. Never be scared to try something.
Quite right. You never know, actually, if you don't try it, you never know that you can actually do that and do it well. Is a good rule of thumb, isn't it? It really is. Kieran, thank you again for your keeping it professional and asking the professional questions.
It's really hard watching you like that, I must admit.
So thank you for that. Thank you again, Borley, for taking your time.
No problem, guys.
We do really appreciate it. We've had a lot of figures again, viewing figures, so it's great. I'm going to obviously say again about the scrolling at the bottom there, the Just Giving page for the Lord Taverners. Please donate if you can. It's not compulsory, but if you feel you've had a bit of entertainment tonight, then please get in your pockets and donate if you can. For me, I didn't get my catchphrase in too many times tonight, but what I will say is thank you very much for watching, everybody. We really appreciate your views and your comments. Keep them coming. And don't forget, when we got to try and get this trending, don't forget to ask the mask. Thank you very much. Good night. Keep safe.
Good night, everyone.